Well, I've been thinking about independent school test and exam results in the last week or so, partly because new data has been released. And I thought this would be a moment to comment on that. Let's start with the PISA tests, the 2015 PISA tests on 15-year-olds. Now, 3 years ago, the 2012 PISA tests were used to criticise independent schools, actually, but the Department for Education has now published an analysis of the 2015 results, and I'll just read a couple of extracts from that. The top performing schools are independent schools. Their performance in science puts them level with 15-year-olds in the top performing countries such as Singapore. Independent school pupils are around a year of schooling ahead of the next highest achieving group in England, the converter academies. A significant proportion of independent school pupils in England are amongst the highest performing 15-year-olds in science anywhere in the world. And within England, a clear pattern emerges where low-level disruption is a barrier to effective learning in comprehensive state schools, yet pupils who attend an independent school are significantly less likely to report low-level disruption. Well, that's the PISA tests, and then in the summer we had the GCSE and A-level results, and we've had tables relating to those in the last week. At GCSE, 62% of independent school pupils achieved A or A star in subjects they took, compared to 20% nationally. At A-level, 49% of our pupils' grades were A or A star, compared to 28% nationally. And when we looked at the A-level performance tables last week, 9 out of the top 10 schools were ISC schools, 81 of the top 100 schools, based on grades achieved, were ISC schools. And we know that sometimes people will say, well, that's because your schools are highly selective. Well, the answer is that some of our schools are highly selective, but actually we know that most are not. And the reason we're getting these good results is because of very good value added. And it's great that this year the value added scores are to be found on the DFE performance tables and in their league table. And that shows that the average progress from GCSE to A-level across all schools is 0. For independent schools, the average value added GCSE to A-level last year was 0 plus 0.15, and for state schools, minus 0.12. So that shows the impact of effective teaching in our schools. It's not because we're selective. And we know it's because our schools have high expectations of their pupils, and we know it's because our pupils employ really good teachers. And also in the last week we've had the Sutton Trust report showing that independent school science teachers are far more highly qualified than in other sectors. 91% of our physicists, for example, have a physics qualification. 11% of all our biology teachers have a doctorate. So it's congratulations to independent schools this year across the PISA tests, GCSE, A-level, pre-U, International Baccalaureate. Our schools have done absolutely outstandingly. We know that life in our schools is not all about exams, and in the last couple of weeks ISC has published some very interesting soft skills research which shows how important that is to many of our schools. But nevertheless, exams are what enable our pupils to go to the top universities, and that's why we must all be delighted by the results this year.